Hello, hello! So, we find ourselves in a awkward situation. You want to run a survival world with a theme and some thoughts for some friends. You want to run it like a survival experience, where they spawn in and have some goals and some objectives. Well, first you need to keep in mind that there are certain size limitations to the world of space engineers. Some of them are incidental, some of them are, well, a matter of engine limitations. This is a highly modified space engineer's world, one of which I'm calling Prop World, as it is an offshoot of a Imperial survival world we've been running. You can see there's NPCs and weapons fire and all kinds of things going on. There are a number of mods making this easier and more difficult for players and GMs alike. There are a number of things and tools that are necessary for anyone aspiring to run such a campaign that are valuable and useful for information and control of the scenario. One of my favorites, and one of the best ways to keep an eye on what your players are doing, as well as keeping track of various encounters and difficult things that the players are doing, is the F9 key. Now, as a player, you're going to want to be high up in the admin rank, so either running it or having been promoted to it. I'll go over that later, but various ranks of promotion allow you to access the administrative tools of your world. I would suggest several videos on how to become a world administrator, or simply using a default local hosted world, you should be an administrator by default. But there are many, many tools at your disposal for doing so. The first page of which is Alt F10, gives you the admin screen. As a full administrator, you'll have access to all of these options. Ignoring PCU limits allows an administrator to build and paste in objects above and beyond their PCU limit. So if PCU is enabled on the server, you can build and use beyond that limit, which, if you've been particularly restrictive, would allow you to build more difficult encounters than the players have access to resources to counter it. Ignore safe zones allows you to ignore the effects caused by administrator-created or player-created safe zones. Keep original owner on paste is a useful tool that has many purposes, which I can show off right now. With Enable Creative Mode Tools, it allows you to use creative mode tools in survival worlds. Can use all terminals allows you to use any and all terminals regardless of their ownership, so you can access structures that your presently included faction does not own. Invulnerable makes it so that you cannot die even when you run out of oxygen or hydrogen or energy. These things are quite valuable. Untargetable means that AI turrets will leave you alone and not fire at you. Show all players simply means that all players in your view range will be displayed as if they had broadcasting on full. Now, you can notice that there appears to be a ship over there with multiple waypoints and one in the air. There are specific controls for spawning vessels in a variety of different ways. These vessels are being spawned by one of many mods in this current world, but vanilla drones and cargo encounters will work much the same way. If you, say, want to copy that drone or delete it to prevent your players from needing to deal with it, you can use F9 to go into your spectator cam. Now, you will notice that you can still control your player, but your camera is frozen wherever it was in spectator. Now, hitting F8 will allow that spectator cam to move. Now, a common mistake that occurs and will leave you frustrated in spectator cam is if you hold control and move the mouse wheel, it will adjust your rotation sensitivity. accidentally lowering your rotation sensitivity to a ludicrously low level leaves you turning quite slowly. Useful for finer detail, but crippling when you're trying to keep up with flying enemies or an active situation. Scroll up and you regain mouse control. This is frequently done when using Shift in Spectator to fly around, because if you, when moving around using the WAS and D keys in Spectator Cam, hold Shift, you double your speed. You sprint in Spectator. Quite useful. All of your creative mode tools should still function in Spectator if you have creative mode tools turned on for your character. For instance, I should be able to paste in battery blocks wherever I wish, or put down turrets. Notice how in Spectator mode, I can't align with the grid, but I can still place objects. This is a difficulty of Spectator mode, where modifying an existing grid is quite difficult, but you can delete certain things on it by shift-clicking. This is how I was removing select blocks from vessels in transit that are NPC-owned. While the cursor does not display properly that a block is selected or hovered over, you can hold Control to delete a block, creative mode, and then drag it in a line, and it will delete those blocks in a line. So, for instance, this block here, an enemy's NPC ship has spawned overhead, and it is firing at my structures, and I don't want it to. That turret is offending me. Now, there are Spectator mode controls to latch onto a ship, but if you don't have time or don't know how to do that, you can simply fly close and hold Control and spam click the button in the area to start removing blocks as the ship is flying. Harder to do with faster moving targets, but allows you to remove blocks in flight while the game is running, so that you can take a ship that has too many guns or is too dangerous at distance, remove blocks from it, or to tactically remove blocks or challenges from in front of your players. Now, another control aspect of this is that, let's say I don't want them to fight this right now, but it's already spawned in. I've got creative mode tools on, and this enemy is just, I don't want them to fight it right now, or it's too tough or too strong an NPC for the current moment, and I want it to go away. Instead of manually deleting it one block at a time, I can use the controls, Control X. Are you sure you want to delete the selected object? Copy will be stored in clipboard. This will overwrite your clipboard with that object, as owned by the NPC pirate faction it currently is, with whatever ownership it currently has. This is useful for, say, if you have a ship that is spawned in, but it is spawned in somewhere you don't want it. Let's say I wanted to have that spawn over here. Oh, yeah, notice how it's snap aligned to the existing station grid. So if I place this NPC block here, what will happen? Well, not interesting things, because I don't have keep original owner on paste on. What will happen is it will be owned by me. What I want is to keep original owner on paste. Now, when I paste this block in, it will be owned by the pirates and will attack the nearby station. It will fly using whatever AI or programmed route it has in it. If it has a remote control block with waypoints, it will do its best to follow those at whatever point it was copied from. This one is making use of, I believe, assertive installations or assertive airships and flying on its predetermined path. But I'm going to use Control X and delete it. See, that's deleted. Now, let's say I've seen that ship, and I want it to stay put somewhere. And I've gone, okay, that's the NPC ship. It's a large grid. What if I want to convert that to a station? but I want to do it in a way that maybe the players might not notice. So I can once again go Control V to paste in the grid. But if I occlude any part of this vessel with static voxels of any kind, it will automatically convert this station from a ship to a station grid. That, even though it is a ship, when it's been pasted in, by overwriting part of it over voxels, it has become a station, and it is now immobile. These are useful controls for controlling the frequency and or appearance of NPCs that have been spawning in your world as a GM running a game for players. This allows you to moderate and or control some spawning in a way that allows you to attempt to manage the difficulty of an ongoing session. So let's go ahead and delete this ship. Oh wait, let's not. Let's grab a blueprint of an enemy-owned vessel, NPC ATM Oban Tide. This blueprint of the NPC ATM Oban Tide is blueprinted as being owned by enemies. Spawning in blueprints is as simple as hitting F10 and opening up your blueprint library. Let's say grab that NPC Oban Tide and copy it to clipboard. Now, with original ownership still on, I should be able to paste it in and have it still be owned by the enemy NPC faction. But if I delete that and remove keep original ownership on paste, when I paste it in, it should be owned by me and will attack the nearby enemy grid as a station or as an NPC. Since these have programming blocks on them with NPC functionality built into them, they are attempting to follow their built-in programming. Not hard to do, not that hard to understand. There are a number of other administrative controls available to you in the admin menu that are extremely useful. The Alt F10 key opens up this menu and you get a drop-down list. Cycle Objects allows you to look through the world looking for different types of objects by different categories. Biggest distance from players, most active drills, most active reactors. These things allow you to sort through everything on your server or your hosted game using different built-in criteria. Find only small grids, find only large grids, first, last, previous, name, current value. These things are all quite useful. Player control and teleport here are different use case. They have very limited uses. For instance, teleport here will put my character underground from this viewpoint, exactly where my camera is currently placed. Let's not do that and perhaps take a look at something else. So, another thing worth noting, that as of our current understanding of the game and its current state, the Alt F10 menu brings you a number of ways to prevent AIs from shooting at you. Enable creative mode tools allows you to copy paste. Invulnerable makes it so that you cannot die. Untargetable means that turrets will no longer look at you. Can use all terminals seems to have the same effect as untargetable, meaning that the turrets are treating you as owning them. Basically meaning that you can access any terminal in the world, meaning that you, by default, have ownership of that turret. Not necessarily full ownership, but the game is acting as if you were the creator and current faction owner of that turret. thus preventing them from firing at you. In theory. Allow for keen bugs and or problems as they occur. It is a frequent problem that turrets have been known to spawn or be built and fire at their own creator. This has happened in the past and hopefully been fixed by a number of patches, but has been still sporadically known to occur. The global permissions list is one of the big ones you want to look at. Allow damage is a frequent setting allow you to set whether or not objects in your world can currently be damaged. Allow voxel hands, allow building projections, allow building, allow grinding, allow welding, allow drilling, allow shooting. All of these things are very useful administrative settings to have. For instance, if you have turrets that are firing, but ignoring the allow damage setting, if you disable allow shooting, those turrets will not be able to even fire, thus not creating any damage. But if you want to create, say, a dramatic scene where the enemy is firing at someone, but not actually allow them to be killed, having allow shooting on, but allow damage off, means that they can be fired at, but not injured. So your players can have a dramatic running through the explosions moment, while not actually dying. Now, having these settings allows you to create interesting scenarios and areas. When combined with safe zones, allows you to control player activity in a very, very limited way. For instance, if you have, say, a world where no drilling is allowed, it allows players to only gain resources by trading with NPCs. Trading with NPCs or grinding down enemy vessels, being the only way to gain resources, is quite fulfilling, but it only lasts as long as players are not able to build a safe zone. It is my current understanding that safe zones override even administrative settings of that type. Now, in spectator mode here, you'll notice that I've got these objects here that I want to interact with, but I'm in spectator mode. I can't. And I want to get here to come look at and build on these structures. Dang it all, I'll have to hit F6 to go back to my body and fly all the way here in person. Or use the cycle objects and then teleport here using that third-party camera. Incorrect. In spectator mode, at any time, you can hit the controls Control and Spacebar, and it will drop your current player in that location. Warning, if you are in a seat, cockpit, or control setup of any kind, it will drop the object you are controlling as well. So if I was to happen to be sitting in, say, this cockpit, revert to control mode, go get in said cockpit, go back into spectator cam by hitting F9 and then F8 to allow me to move around and look around, and hit control space again, it moves the whole ship. Great for teleporting your players if they've run out of power and you need to jump them somewhere quickly without them noticing or realizing that the jump drive is in fact actually broken. Now that I'm here in person, there are several administrative tricks involving safe zones and players that are also a thing. You may also see here that I've incorrectly forgotten that even as a creative player, you still need power to do things. In a survival world, but with creative tools on, it allows you to spawn in objects, but let's just say they don't automatically fuel themselves, which is, on one hand, a good thing. On another, it allows you to create facilities that are intact, but in everything but, power and guns. So, I have this safe zone. let us say, Alt F10, I have turned drilling off in this world. Oh no, whatever shall we do? Well, let's go to this safe zone. Safe zones can only be enabled on stations. Oh. Let's convert this to a station by building it as a station, grabbing this, Control X. Oh. Safe zones can only be enabled on stations. Enable. Let's go with allow drilling, allow shooting, allow building. Now, I should be able to drill. What's this? Did they fix that? Local safe zones are no longer overwriting world settings. Yay! Now you will notice that even though I'm outside the safe zone, it's giving me the drilling is disabled in safe zone. Even though it's not in a safe zone, it's disabled in the administrations menu.
Energy critical. Meteor storm inbound.
These things are useful for a variety of reasons. You can use administrative safe zones to enforce similar things. The safe zone. Let's say I want to make my own safe zone. I already have one for the midpoint of the world. Up in the sky up there. Let's say I want to make one on the planet here, new. Let's go, new safe zone. My safe zone, 1D9C84. Unfortunately, we're not able to rename them currently, so you just have to remember which is which, and it can be quite cumbersome to actually do so. Let's set to spherical. Let's increase that range to something gnarly and enable safe zone collision, reduced radius until no safe zones are overlapping. Ah, we have a problem. A player safe zone is disabling this. Let's turn it off and see what happens. Or disable it. Alt F10. So we have our second safe zone and we enable it and oh, it's kicked me out. How on earth did it do that? Well, I wasn't on its list. That's how. By not being on its list, it ejects you at rather high speed. Many a player and admin has made these mistakes.
Fuel critical.
Anyway, so yes, as you can see, it is an easy mistake to make. Because before you enable the safe zone, you should really configure, move to safe zone, configure filter. Because it starts out in whitelist mode. Only the things you explicitly allow are allowed inside. Wonder where that smoke effect is coming from. That's new. I've never seen that before. That's different. Huh. Never mind. Well, yes, I'm betting it probably has something to do with the fact that there are stations and buildings locked in place that the safe zone can't remove. So let's take this safe zone and let's configure filter, turn it back to a blacklist. So now, as a blacklist, it serves that purpose. Blacklists mean that only things you explicitly say cannot enter will be ejected.
No energy.
So let's take a look at that menu again. You might notice that the color menu is currently broken. In this edition of Space Engineers, you can no longer fully see the blue slider. It is below the bottom of the reach of the menu. Adjusting POV or things of that nature does not appear to fix it in any noticeable way, as the slider now no longer reaches all the way down. So that's a thing. Also, there are scammers attempting to con my family again, and that is not appreciated or welcome in any shape, form, or fashion. Anyway, so with some of these basics under your belt, it should make your management of your friends' scenarios and or your own sessions a little bit easier to do. And as a GM myself, arming other people with the tools they need to do interesting and useful things in Space Engineers is always a good thing. Shared knowledge is always useful. By the way, for anyone who didn't know, the engineer turrets have a little button on the bottom of them. You can put ammo in that way, and they work just fine, even with weapon core. I don't know how they did it, but they work. They aren't a weapon core turret that works with weapon core. It's nice. Anyway, that should be all for episode 1. If anyone has any recommendations, requests, or further information they'd like me to pass on as to how to do certain things or how to do certain effects, there's always more to cover with Space Engineers. If people want more tutorials or more information or just general questions of how to do certain things or how to enable or enact certain kinds of scenarios, I'm more than happy to film more of these and answer those questions. Bye!